Hey everyone, I've tried for like 2 hours, really, honestly, to get those videos I recorded in class to upload, but the file size is too big and it's not playing nice. So I just wanted to record a quicker, shorter, hopefully, video, just kind of reviewing the lesson plan that you're going to teach for your first teach, just for you to have as reference. Okay, so again, just wanted to say, like, when you do your first teach, it's going to be a co-teach. So if there are two of you or three of you, what will happen is one of you will teach, say, like first period. So if the first person is teaching first period, the partner may be like the co-teacher where they help pass out materials. They may help with questions in small groups, kind of like that, but they are not the primary leader of that lesson. In second period, they would flip roles. And so then the second person now becomes the primary teacher. The first person becomes like the co-teacher, the backup teacher. So anyways, there's that. If you have questions or need clarification on that, please let me know. And then I'm just going to get started because, like I said, file size really affects how this thing works. So your lesson is called reaction time. And this beginning phase, think about those 5 E's that we talked about. Think about which one this will be. So it says, do you think you're fast? And so you would pause and say, do you think you're fast? And give your middle schoolers, because this is a middle school audience, a chance to say what they think, if they think they're fast or not. And this may be a 2 or 3 minute conversation, depending on how interactive your kids are. Okay. And so after you say that, you'll say, how would we determine if someone was fast? And you may go straight to that if they don't talk to you, so you may have to pull kind of information out of them. But it says, so how will we determine if someone was fast? And so then you kind of still, you get some ideas from them, you hear what they have to say, kind of talk back and forth a little bit. And so then you're going to show this video. This is the one of the Duck Dynasty. Click it. It starts at 1:55 already, and then you play it until 2:35. This is just something to get, it's silly, okay? It's just to get them excited about the activity. So think about what 5E this would fall under, all right? Next, you say today's activity is called reaction time, and we're going to see how fast your reaction time is. And then I would say here, before I move on, say, before we can get started, I need to go over some of the rules on how we're going to collect data and how we're going to see how fast you are. Like, how will we measure that? Okay. And so at this point, they should already all have their rulers and they should have their data sheet. So make sure it is distributed at this point. You're going to show them these ruler images. You're going to emphasize that they're using the centimeter side. Don't just say, we're using the centimeter side. Say, we're using the centimeter side, and say, everybody hold up your ruler. This isn't the translucent one, but hold up your ruler and show me the centimeter side. And I would walk around the room and I would look and say, like, oh, you're not on the centimeter side, or okay, everybody looks like they're good. This is just to reiterate that they know what you're talking about. Also, you could say, like, how do I know this is the centimeter side? So you want them to say things like, we see cm, or it says centimeter, or it's the smaller one, whatever. You're just trying to get them talking so that other kids who are in the room who may not have an idea of what you're talking about, they can hear the other kid who said, well, it says centimeter. And so then they can look at their ruler and be like, oh, it does. Let me see where it says centimeter. You know what I mean? You're going to have kids that, for whatever reason, they listen better to their classmates. That's why you have them kind of reiterate what you've said. So we've established that we're on the centimeter side. Next, we're going to go to this one. And it says, when you record the data, use the value that is below your thumb or finger, whichever finger is on top of the ruler. And so this is an example, and notice it kind of zooms in, that arrow shows, it says, for this example, we would record 10.4. In class, we talked about, do not assume that your kids know, why was it 0.4? Do they understand that it's 4 ticks past the 10, So don't assume that. So say, let's talk about, why is it 10.4? And I would have them like, I would even say maybe like, on your ruler, show me where 7.2 would be. And so then they'll point at 7.2, you know what I mean? You'll walk around the room and you'll check and see. If some kids are like, I don't know, then that's when you have that discussion about, like, it's 2 ticks past the 7. You can say, like, every tick is a tenth. And then obviously that last tick is the 10th, so it's the next whole number. So anyways, there needs to be conversation about that. Please do not ever go in a classroom, even if kids should know it, you can't assume that they know it. I also made a note on here because I was mistaken in class when I taught this. It says, make sure the 0 on the centimeter side is facing down before you complete each trial. So I put that just to remind you, and I would show them, like, show me, the 0 is facing down. All right, next. Example of data set 1, using the information from the examples on the previous 2 slides. So remember back up here, this guy, whoever this person was, he landed on 10.4. So I would say, if if this was Johnny Crash, this is my first person, then I would record his data right here. And so you're going to show them, this is where you record that data. Because again, they may not know how to record data on a chart. So just make sure you're like repeating yourself, reiterating it, going as far in depth as you possibly can. Okay, and so next, this is the link to the printable data form. Somebody had emailed me to ask if I could attach this so you can include it in your lesson plan. So there that is. I've got it referenced on the PowerPoint, and I will have them printed out for you in the little packets that you bring, but there's that just in case you wanted to see that. All right, it says the experiment. So first step is you're going to conduct 3 trials and enter your data in data table 1. So I would say, what data table are we using? Data table 1, because there's going to be 2 different data tables. And say, calculate the average. This is where you would pause and say, what does that even mean? How can I calculate the average? And so I would suggest put 3 random numbers on the board and say, if you have 8, 17 and 22 and say, how could I calculate the average? And so surely some of the kids are going to kind of talk with you, but if not, you may have to guide them to that and say like, would I find the sum? What does sum mean? How do I find the sum? And then say, someone will say divide by 3. And so you want to clarify, why am I dividing by 3? Because some kids are going to think you divide by 3 no matter what. They're going to think if you have 10 numbers one day and you're trying to find the average that you divide by 3 because they don't understand that 3 is associated with the amount of values. You know what I mean? So like make sure you say, why are we dividing by 3? And they're going to say, because there's 3 numbers in the data set. So it's all about like them understanding, you repeating their understanding, like you're confirming their understanding and helping teach other kids who maybe have a misunderstanding at that point. You'll say you'll write your averages on this chart on the board and I will enter them into GeoGebra. So remember we discussed this in class. In the past, they had kids type it into GeoGebra on their computers. I don't think there's any need to get computers out with this. It just creates chaos. Kids have trouble logging in, don't do that. So I would click this if I were you, and I would pull up GeoGebra on the board, like on your screen, the teacher screen. And then on the whiteboard, I would do like we did where we have like groups 1 through how many ever groups you have, 10 or 15 groups, because they're going to be in groups of 2. And then say like average 1, average 2. And so they'll write the average of like I would say, so like if this was Johnny Crash, his average here would be team 1, average 1. If Susie, whatever, whoever, Stephanie Speedy, her average is here, then she would be group 1, average 2. And so then you, the teacher, you will type their averages into here. Okay, so let's make up some numbers. If it's gonna let me type. Remember, this is for the whole class. You're just typing everybody's in. Okay. I'm gonna try to get a few to refer back to. All right, so anyways, you can use the little scrolly thing on your mouse and you can zoom out. And so here you might want to have like a little 2-minute discussion on outliers. You're not teaching a whole lesson on outliers, but because this whole lesson is involving data and graphs and charting information, you could say like, this would be an outlier. That means it's really far from the rest of them. And so then you would want to discuss like mean, okay, because we've been using the word average. And so now you're throwing in the word mean. Some kids may not understand the connection between those 2 words. And so you may say like mean is another word for average. So the mean or the average for our entire class for this experiment is 10.01. And I would make a note on the board separately because you're going to use this later when we do sound. And so you want to be able to like come back and clear it out. So anyways, there's that. Let me go back to this. Oh, another thing, and we did this in class, I would show them what the experiment is, because so far, like none of these slides have really gone over like, what exactly are we doing here? They just know that they're saying how fast they are and they know that there's a ruler involved. So that's when I would have 1 or 2 people come up and say like, let's demonstrate. So demonstrate like, one person holds it up and then when they drop it, the other person catches it. That kind of thing. Demonstrate like where you would read it. Maybe do a trial run before you collect the data. Like you're going to have some time for that. So anyways, just make sure they understand like what they're actually doing. All right, they will complete this experiment here. So I would even say like, and you can ask your mentor teacher, like, hey, do you have a stopwatch or do you have like some people will have timers built into their smartboard? And so I would say like, let's do 10 minutes. That's our allocated time for this first experiment. After like 7 or 8 minutes, if you notice everybody's done, you can move on quicker. But it's always good with kids, especially middle school students, to kind of establish that stop time. Like we are not going past 10 minutes because sometimes they'll take 30 if you let them. So anyways, once they have completed their whole first experiment, they have filled out the chart on the table or on the board, and you've put the information here in the GeoGebra dot plot generator, and you've had that discussion, then you're going to go here. Okay. You're going to play this human reaction time video. You'll click it. And basically, this video talks about how their eye sees it, and it kind of has a visual breakdown right here. The eye sees that the ruler's dropped. It tells the brain that the ruler's dropped, and the brain tells the hand to grab the ruler. And so it's showing how that affects your reaction time. Okay, and so we say, what are some factors that could affect reaction times for this activity? That's when they talk about like, well, if one person holds it higher or holds it lower or whatever. You could also talk about like, do you think other senses would help us be quicker or slower, and talk about like, what are your senses? And so they're going to talk about like taste, smell, whatever. And so it's like, can we smell the ruler? No. Can we taste the ruler? No. So what about sound? So what if we did by sound? And so say on our next experiment, our next trial run of this, we're going to use sound to see how fast our reaction time is, and say, so this is honor system. We don't have folds. But say you're going to close your eyes. And so your team member is going to hold your ruler up, and they're going to say go. When they say go, that's when they drop the ruler, and that's when you grab it. Okay. And so again, show what this would look like. Have someone come up and do a demonstration of it. And so then you're going to go to this, and it's going to say hypothesis. If we use sound to know when to grab the ruler, so again, our eyes are closed, then reaction time will be blank. Do they think it's faster or slower? And so you'll have that discussion. Another thing, and I didn't mention this in class, I thought about this later. If they drop it, that doesn't count as a trial. Technically, in an actual experimental environment, that would count as a trial, and it would be like 0 or well, it would probably 100. I don't even know how you would count that because you didn't catch it. But so we only want caught trials. Okay, so just clarifying that. Test your hypothesis and record your data. So this is where they close their eyes and they do sound and they run it again. Again, I would say, okay, 10 minutes to do this activity, and then evaluate about 7 or 8 minutes in if they seem to be finishing slower or needing a few more minutes. They'll write the averages on here just like they did on the first table, and then you'll record those on the board. Here's an extra link for that. And then the rest of these are just kind of like the evaluation phase, hint, hint. So it's just application. These are basic, like elementary level questions. We didn't do really difficult questions because we don't know what prior knowledge these kids have. And we want it to be just kind of like, an experience for y'all to be confident in the classroom and a successful lesson's been taught. So anyways, you'll say like, if Stephanie is twice as fast as Johnny and Johnny caught the ruler at 10 centimeter mark, where did Stephanie catch it? And so there's visuals that go with this. So this is where Johnny caught it at the 10 centimeter mark. Where did Stephanie catch it? At the 5, whatever. And then there's those extra questions. I think there's just this extra question, and there's like a visual. All right, this is your end of class discussion. So it says, based on our result, does sight or sound provide the faster reaction time? Can we say that this will be true for all humans? Why or not? And so this is like you're talking back and forth with them. What is bias? Could there be bias in our testing? Explain. Like, this is kind of where you bring back up the what if somebody held it higher or lower? How would that affect it? Is that a bias? Anyways, you kind of have all those discussions. If you finish, and let's say that your class period is 55 minutes and you finish in 40, there's a 15-minute gap. You're not done. Okay. So after this discussion, after you've completely successfully done all of it, be like, all right, we got a few minutes left. Let's see if we can do a different trial or something, and say like, so what do y'all think we could test next? Or just say like, does anybody want to try the sight one again to see if you can be quicker now that you kind of know what's going on? And so then you would just play the activity again. So make sure when you're teaching, you're responsible for the kids for that entire period. Okay. Because that's how teaching is too. Like sometimes I would plan a lesson and it would be an amazing lesson and it ended 20 minutes early. And that doesn't mean I just sit at my computer and check emails and the kids, wreak havoc for 20 minutes. I've still got to instruct them, whether it be like additional practice problems or more discussion, whatever you want to do at that time, but you're still in charge of the learning. Okay. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I hope this is helpful, and I hope it's short enough that it will load. But anyways, please reach out if you need anything. Okay.